We're coming to the end of Ramadan 2022, and this year we see a little bit of pre-pandemic normalcy, and I'm legit excited, but that also means we're gonna get back to hosting. This is the only recipe compilation you need to make all the delicious Malay bomb decadent dishes for when those guests come knocking, so you want to save this, okay? Let's go! This is Ayam Merah, or a spicy tomato stew chicken, a classic crowd-pleasing Malay dish of a chicken stewed in a rich tomato gravy, and this goes so well with Nasi Minyak or a ghee butter rice, which I'm including here as well, so let's do this. First, let me chop up some tomatoes. Even though it is a tomato-based stew, we're not actually using that much tomatoes really, but feel free to use more if you really love tomatoes. This is a more traditional special occasion version that's served at weddings or during Eid, and there's not as much tomatoes used actually. Anyway, we want to chop the tomatoes this way, just roughly chop it, remove this a little bit at the top, and then keep all of this to one side. Can you use canned tomatoes? Yes, I have an easy shortcut recipe for Ayam Merah somewhere here if you want to check that out. Next, let's make the rempah based paste or the aromatics spice blend. I have some dried chilies here. This is a very important ingredient. You want to give that a wash and then pour hot boiling water over it to rehydrate and soften the dried chilies. Just let the chilies hang out for about 10 minutes or so before draining the water away. Then you want to chop the dried chilies into smaller pieces just like this. This will help to blend it a lot easier later on. You can discard some of the seeds in the process as well. Alternatively, you can just use dried chili paste. I always have this in my fridge and you should too. This is what dried chili paste looks like. We'll be using lemongrass to just the inner core, so peel the tough outer layers just like this and then chop off this bottom root, and then we just need this white inner core. Slice it thinly and keep this to one side. Okay, so let's get to the blending. First, the dried chilies or dried chili paste. Onions or shallots, chop it for easier blending. Some garlic, ginger, also chop it into smaller pieces for easier blending. The sliced white inner core of the lemongrass. And finally, a few splashes of water for easier blending. Blend all of that to get a nice paste just like this. Alright, next, let's talk chicken. I have some bone-in chicken here. Now this step is optional I suppose, but highly recommended. So we are going to marinate the chicken with some turmeric powder as well as some salt. This turmeric marinade is a fixture in Malay cooking. We just love that turmeric. Give all of that a good toss just like this, and then we are going to fry the chicken up. Add some oil to your pan or pot, just enough to shallow fry the chicken. And once hot, you can just use high heat for this. Gently lower the chicken pieces in and allow that to fry. Not for long, we are just trying to get a sear on the surface of the chicken. We are not trying to cook the chicken through at all. So again, this pre-frying step is optional, but it will help to sort of solidify the chicken pieces so that it's not falling apart in the stew later on. But I mean, fall off the bone chicken sounds amazing as well, so this is all up to you. So once the surface of the chicken is not pink anymore, just take it off the oil. Okay, let's make the Ayam Merah. I'm just reusing the oil and the pot that we used to fry the chicken earlier. Turn the heat back on to low and then add some cinnamon here, star anise, cardamom, and cloves. Saute until fragrant or when you can see the spices kind of sizzling. Then add the blended spice base from earlier, and you want to continuously stir the rempah in the oil over low to medium heat or until the oil splits. This is when the paste emulsifies and turns a darker shade of red, and the surrounding oil has turned red as well, so something like this. Toss in the chopped tomatoes next. Tomato paste or tomato puree, some salt to taste, and some sugar. And then give all of that a good stir to incorporate. Next, add back the fried chicken pieces. Give all of that a quick stir, and then we are adding water. Not too much water, just enough water to submerge the chicken. Give all of that a quick stir. Let this come to a boil before turning down the heat and letting this simmer for at least 30 minutes to an hour. Occasionally return to stir the pot, otherwise that's it. There's nothing more to it. That is your ayam masak merah. When you come back, your chicken should be fully cooked and the liquid and tomatoes have reduced to this gorgeous thick gravy. This is totally optional, but I am adding peas to get that restaurant quality vibes. Give it a taste test at this point as well and season as required. I am going to be adding some salt as well as sugar, and then that's it. Authentic ayam masak merah is all done. Okay, so listen, while you're letting the ayam masak merah stew, how about making this ultra easy rice cooker nasi minyak or ghee butter rice? To a pan, add ghee or clarified butter. If you have no ghee, then just use butter, it works as well. Along with oil, any neutral tasting oil will do, such as vegetable or canola oil. You don't really want to use all ghee for this because ghee can be a very strong tasting butter. Then to that, add the same spices that we used. So the cinnamon, I have a chunky one here, star anise, cloves and a cardamom. Same thing, you want to saute that until fragrant or it's kind of sizzling, and then I'm adding a blended garlic. Just garlic blended with a couple tablespoons of water, so it's a watery paste just like this. And grated ginger. If you have whole garlic and ginger, then you can blend the two together to form the paste. Saute all of that until fragrant and then turn off the heat. I have some basmati rice here, uncooked, and make sure you want to wash this first until the water runs clear. Basmati rice is the typical rice that is used, but you can use jasmine white rice or any other long grain rice. And then pour in the ghee spice mixture from earlier. Then pour in water next. Add salt if you like, and then stir that through. Pop this in the rice cooker, turn it on, and then that's it. Once your rice cooker beeps or whatever sound it makes when it's done, that's it. Our nasi minyak is done. You will get this fluffy, perfectly cooked nasi minyak easily each time. Plate your rice, maybe remove these whole spices before you serve. And then scoop on that deliciously rich and creamy ayam masak merah. And I also love to serve this with some acar nyonya or pickled spiced vegetables just to complete the meal. Give it a sprinkling of fried shallots and cilantro. And that's our ultra easy set to impress ayam masak merah and nasi minyak. I hope you give this classic easy Malay dish a go, and bye! If you love this ayam masak merah, I bet you will love this next. Today we're making the ultimate beef rendang. Rendang is an Indonesian dish of soft, tender beef slow cooked in a flavor bomb explosion of a coconut stew. There's a reason why this was voted the best food in the world. Now I'm going to be breaking down all the steps so you can also make a foolproof pot at home. It seems hard, but it's really easy, so just trust me on this, and yep, let's do this. Let's talk beef first. The best cut would be the cheapest cut. Now this would be the chuck portion. It is what I have here. Another option that you can try is short ribs, or you can just ask the butcher for a cut that's for stews. With the beef, I'm cutting mine up into cubes just like this. It doesn't really matter the size, it's all up to you. Some people even like to throw in huge chunks of beef in their rendangs. We'll be needing a bruised lemongrass, so remove the top portion of the lemongrass and bruise the bottom part. I'm using a pestle here to knock on the lemongrass to release all of those flavors. You can also just use the back of the knife or the handle. So this is what I mean when I say I want a bruised lemongrass, okay? Let's get some blending done with the rempah-based paste. First, you'll need some dried chilies. Rehydrate the dried chilies in boiling water and then cut it up and remove some of the seeds. Alternatively, you can also just use dried chili paste if you have that ready on hand. To a blender, add the dried chilies, onion, garlic, ginger chopped into smaller pieces for easier blending. This is galangal or blue ginger, also chop it up for easier blending. Now this is fresh turmeric. You can also use turmeric powder if you can't find the fresh ones, but the fresh ones are really good for this. Coriander seeds, fennel and cumin. You can toast these to release the aroma even more. And finally, some water to get an easier blend. You don't have to add water if you have a very good blender, okay? And then simply go and get all of this blended up. So this is what you should get and you are done with your rempah-based paste. Okay, let's get to cooking. You really want to use a heavy base pot for this, or a Dutch oven would be best. Add some oil first and let that heat up. Once it's hot, add the blended spice paste. Now add in cinnamon, star anise, some cloves, and cardamoms. Give all of that a nice saute for about 5 minutes or so, or until it's fragrant. And then we add in our bruised lemongrass, as well as our cut up beef pieces. Stir the beef with all of the rempah-based paste, and we're going to let the beef sweat here. Basically what that means is that we want to drain out the liquid from the beef and let all of that liquid evaporate. Once the liquid has evaporated, you can see how it's a lot more sort of pasty. At this stage, add in the kaffir lime leaves. Now you want to make sure you tear up the leaves to release the flavors before tossing it into the pot. This is tamarind paste for a very slight hint of sourness to just balance out all of the flavors. And now one of the key ingredients of rendang, lots of coconut milk. Stir all of that in and then turn up the heat. We're trying to get it to boil. Once the mixture comes to a bubbling boil, season it with some salt and sugar. This is palm sugar or coconut sugar. This really adds a mellow sweetness and it goes amazingly well with the coconut milk. Alternatively, you can also use brown sugar, or you can just use regular sugar, it's fine. Finally, the single most important ingredient for rendang. This is kerisik, or a toasted coconut butter. Now this is what gives rendang that signature nutty texture and flavor. Without this, it's just not rendang. Give all of that a nice good stir and then lower the heat to a minimum. Like really turn it all the way down. You want the smallest heat possible, okay? And then cover the pot with a lid and we are leaving this to stew for 2 hours. That's right, 2 hours. At the minimum 1 hour, but 2 hours would be perfection to really get a good caramelization and to get the beef all nice and soft and tender. And this is what it looks like at the first 30-minute mark. You can already see a more brown dish. Every 30 minutes, you want to come back to your pot to check on it and stir through the rendang. This is to get an even mix, especially at the base where there would be some caramelization happening already, and also since we really do not want to burn the spices. At the 1 hour mark, and this is what our rendang is looking like. Look at how brown it has gotten. You can see how the coconut milk has reduced drastically and how brown the rendang has gotten from the caramelization of the coconut milk. Now, I did not need to, but if you have especially tough meat or you find that it's drying up a bit too soon, you can add more water at this stage. This will give the beef more liquid to stew in, so it softens easier. So feel free to add a cup of water or two right about this stage. About 20 to 30 minutes before the end, you want to keep a closer eye and stir your rendang more often. A lot of the liquid would have reduced, so there's just more chances of burning. So you just want to come back and give it more stirs more often. And we've now arrived at the 2 hour mark finally, and voila! Our gorgeous, beautifully dark, fully caramelized, reduced rendang is all done. The beef has become so soft and tender and is infused with so many complex and insane flavors. Long list of ingredients, long cooking time, but quite simple steps and totally worth it. So don't be intimidated and just give this rendang a go. Today we're making Sambal Goreng, or a tofu tempeh stir fry that is a staple Malay dish. Now my mom makes the best one, but this is an easier version that loses none of the signature flavors, spicy, fragrant, and can be easily vegan, and most importantly, mom approved. So let's go! First, let's do some blending. To a blender, add shallots or onions, some cloves of garlic, ginger, chop it up for easier blending. This is galangal or blue ginger, again chop it for easier blending. And lemongrass stalks, just the inner core. Now if you don't know how to do that, I have the link somewhere in the description. Add some water for easier blending, about 1/4 to 1/2 cup, because we do want a fine blend with this. And then we blend. Next, you're going to need some tempeh or fermented soybean cakes. You can get them easily at most supermarkets these days, but I found this super traditional version, so I'm really excited. Cut them into cubes just like this. You will also need 1 block of firm tofu. Again, you want to cube them. Also, please ignore the plaster on my finger. I had a bad boo-boo. And then basically we are going to be deep frying the tempeh and the tofu, or in my case a shallow fry, because I really hate using so much oil at home. So first I am going to fry the tempeh until it's all nice and golden brown and crispy, just like this. It should take about just 5 to 7 minutes. Take it off the oil, keep it to one side, and then fry the tofu cubes next. Also, you might want to lower the heat so the oil doesn't get all splattery and scary, or I would just fry the tofu first before the tempeh next time. Anyway, same thing, you want to get a nice brown on the tofu or until it's firmer than firm, and then take it off the oil, something like this. Again, keep this to one side. Alright, now the same pan, turn off the heat and remove some of the oil until you're left with about 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil. We're not wasting oil here. Turn the heat back on and use a low heat. Now remember our base paste from earlier, add that to the oil. To that, I'm also adding some dried chili paste. Now my recipe is somewhere here, or you can also just use the store-bought stuff too, or sambal goreng. Stir the two pastes together. I'm also going to be adding kaffir lime leaves, and this is optional, but this is going to really help make it super fragrant. Saute this over low heat until it's fragrant and the paste has reduced and dried. You should also see the oil turn red. At this stage, add in the chopped green beans. So this part depends on how crispy or soggy you want your beans to get. I sauteed my green beans for about 5 minutes because I do like them a little bit more crispy before adding in my shrimps. So I have about 8 to 9 shrimps here. Add more if you like it more shrimpy. As well as 1 sliced red chili, more for color, not really for the spice. So if you want to make this completely vegan, just don't add the shrimps. It'll still be delicious. Saute all of that together just until the shrimps turn pink before adding in the fried tempeh and the tofu from earlier. Give that a stir through before adding some salt and sugar to taste. And just like that, you are basically done. This is one of the more classic Malay dishes of all time, and this is so easy and fragrant and spicy and quick to prepare. So I hope you give this a go, and bye! Today we're making sayur lodeh, or vegetables stewed in a coconut curry soup that's full of flavor and umami. This Malay Indonesian dish is my mom's recipe and super easy, so let's go! First, we have to blend up some ingredients. To a blender, add in some garlic cloves, shallots or 1 onion, 2 lemongrass stalks, you just want the white inner portion sliced, a tablespoon of dried shrimps, washed and soaked in warm water. You can add the shrimp water in, by the way, it's fine. We're also going to add belacan or dried shrimp paste. Next, I have 2 fresh red chilies chopped. Exclude these if you want 0 spice, though these red chilies are actually quite mild. And finally, turmeric powder. You can also use fresh turmeric, but I would think the powder form is a lot more accessible to most of us. Some water as well, just to help ease the blending process. And then we blend. You want to blend this really finely, so don't be shy to add in more water if it's not blending as easily as you'd like. And this is the consistency that you want. Okay, time to cook. In a pot, add some oil. Once it is hot, we are sauteing the base paste from earlier first. Stir fry the base paste just until it's dried a little or until it's really fragrant. And then I'm adding in my so-called hard vegetables first, and that would be my carrots and long beans. Not for long, give that a nice stir through, and then I add in my water. I'm adding about 800 milliliters of water here because I like a more soupy consistency. Now if you like a thicker gravy, I would add about 500 milliliters of water. Now leave that alone and let that come to a nice boil. Once it comes to a nice boil, we add in the rest of the vegetables. There are really no rules to what vegetables you can add. Traditionally, jicama's are used for a gorgeous crunch, but I'm using sweet turnip here. Next, I'm also using cabbages here. Now, I like my cabbages more soft and wilted, so I'm adding my cabbages in right now. Give that a gentle poking with your spatula, and then we are going to cover the pot with the lid. And then we are going to be letting this stew until we have achieved the desired softness of the cabbages. And when you come back, your cabbages should be all nice and translucent and soft. I left mine on for about 10 minutes. At this stage, lower the heat and you have to make sure that it's not boiling hot. And then I am pouring in my coconut milk. Now, you really want to make sure that your soup is not boiling hot when you add in the coconut milk, or else your milk will curdle. That's not pretty. Anyway, gently stir in your coconut milk. And then we are seasoning this with some salt, as well as some sugar. Next, I am adding probably my favorite item in this, tofu puffs. Now, you can also pan fry firm tofu and tempeh and add that in for the protein. I really love using these tofu puffs though, because they really soak up all of the curry and the flavor. As a final touch for a little bit of color, I'm going to be tossing in some decadent red chilies at the end. It really doesn't add spice at all. This is just for show, for color, for the aesthetic. And pretty much your veggie curry is done. This is Sayur Lodeh. Serve this with lontong or rice cakes, or just over rice, though I personally love drinking this as a soup on the side. Now, I hope you give this easy, healthy Malay style Asian soup a go, and yep. If you're Malay, it just feels wrong if there's no spicy sambal on the table as a condiment, at least not in my house. So this is an easy sambal to me, adapted from my Nasi Lemak video. Let's go! First, these are dried chilies. If you've been on this channel for long, you know how this goes. You want to give the dried chilies a rinse under water and then add hot boiling water to it. Allow the dried chilies to rehydrate. About 10 minutes or so, your dried chilies should be nicely rehydrated. Simply drain the water and cut the dried chilies to smaller pieces for easier blending. Use a pair of scissors because you do not want to be touching this at all. They're hot, okay, and spicy. And our dried chilies are done. This is optional and I actually rarely do this, but I am dry toasting the belacan or fermented dried shrimp paste. It usually comes in blocks, so you just want to break off a chunk of the belacan. Place the belacan in a dry pan and heat over low to medium heat. Belacan is damp at its raw form, and you know it's nicely toasted once it gets kind of dry and crumbly on the surface. It will also break easily and it should turn a slightly darker shade. And that's how you know your belacan is toasted and ready to go. Alright, now we're just gonna be blending all of the ingredients for our sambal. First, the dried chilies that we prepared earlier. You can also use dried chili paste, by the way, if you have that on hand. Next, onions, or you can use shallots as well. Some cloves of garlic, standard. Ginger. This is lemongrass, you just want the inner core of it. And the toasted belacan. Finally, while I usually add water to a blender to blend things up easier, but for sambal, I use oil. And give all of that a blend and you should get something like this. To a pan, add just a little bit of oil and you just want enough to get hot oil going, and then over low to medium heat, add the blended sambal paste. Continuously stir fry the sambal. This is a huge amount, so it will take a while to fully cook. You don't need this much sambal at one sitting, but you're going to be doing all the hard work of blending a bunch of stuff anyway, so why not make extra, stick it in the fridge so that the next time you have plenty of sambal ready to go. Anyway, you want to stir fry the sambal until it has dried down and emulsified. It will also turn a darker, deeper shade and the oil is floating above the sambal. This is called pecah minyak or the oil splitting process, and this is how you know your sambal is fully cooked. When you've reached this stage, add tamarind paste. I diluted the tamarind paste in some water just so it's a liquid form and is able to stir in easier with the sambal. Next, sugar. Nasi lemak sambal is sweet, so we are going to have to add quite a bit of sugar. I'm using some coconut palm sugar, but you can simply use brown sugar or even just regular white sugar. Give your sambal a taste test and then add salt. Belacan already has salt in it, so it's always good to taste it first before adding salt because you do not want to add too much salt and then it just becomes a salty sambal. Give your sambal another taste test, and if it tastes delicious, our sambal is ready. Yay! Now I know you want to check out that crispy ayam goreng or Malay spiced fried chicken next, so you want to click on that right now. This is Ayam Goreng or Malay fried chicken. Who does not love fried chicken? And you know what? Whenever I have guests, they always expect some piping hot Ayam Goreng. This is my go-to recipe. It's really easy, so let's go. First, let's blend together the ingredients for the marinade. To a blender, add 1 red onion. You want to chop it up for easier blending. You can also use shallots, not an issue. Garlic. Ginger. I have some minced ginger here, but you can just use regular ginger. Just chop them up for easier blending. This is galangal or blue ginger. Also cut it up for easier blending. Lemongrass, just the inner white core. You would notice that it's a much rougher chop. It actually works better for this ayam goreng recipe. Turmeric powder. If you have fresh turmeric, that's actually best, but turmeric powder is of course a lot more accessible to most of us. Cumin. Fennel. And coriander seeds. For these 3 spices, you have the option of toasting them if you want. Some salt. And finally, you want to add just a little bit of water for easier blending. And then give all of that a blend. Next, let's grab our chicken. You want to rinse this and try to drain off as much of the water. Combine the marinade with the chicken pieces. And then I'm adding some corn flour. You can also use rice flour. Try not to use regular all-purpose flour. And then simply combine all of that together. I'm using gloves here because turmeric stains, okay, and I just don't need the yellow fingers today. So the corn flour does a couple of things. It helps to soak up any excess liquid so that the batter sticks to the chicken. Most importantly, the corn flour is going to give the chicken pieces a gorgeous crispiness for hours. After you've cooked it, just say no to soggy chicken, okay? Marinate this for at least 30 minutes. Overnight would of course be best. Okay, let's fry these babies up. To a pot, add lots of oil, like lots. This is fried chicken, eh? We have to deep fry this. You know it's ready when bubbles come up when you use a wooden chopstick, or you can simply drop a few bits of batter and it should sizzle immediately. Then gently lower the chicken parts in. Keep a medium heat going. There is simply no need to adjust the heat while the chicken is cooking. When you're frying the ayam goreng, the chicken batter might sink to the bottom. This is perfectly normal. You want to just use some tongs to move the chicken around a little bit so that it doesn't stick to this batter at the bottom of the pot. This is optional, but I like to very carefully use my spatula to gently scrape the base of my pot so the batter does not stick to the bottom. Careful, okay? You don't want hot oil splashing everywhere, but this portion is completely optional. Anyway, I like to fry my fried chicken for about 12 to 15 minutes or until my ayam goreng turns a gorgeous dark brown color. If you're Malay, you know that we love the darker shade versus a light golden chicken. But yeah, just cook it however you like it. Make sure it's cooked through. You want to cook in batches. You do not want to overcrowd the pan. This causes the temperature to drop, resulting in a soggy chicken. Ugh, I know it's tempting. The good thing about fried chicken is that you can simply leave it alone to let it cook. There's no active cooking required. Here's a fun little tip. When you're done with all of your chicken, simply spoon some of the leftover marinade batter into the oil and immediately swirl it around so it's not just one glob. And you'll create a lot of these super yummy, crispy batter bits. Just remove from the oil once it turns all nice and golden brown. And that's Ayam Goreng. Super easy and flavorful, and I promise you an ultimate crowd pleaser. It also stays crispy for hours after you've made it, so I really hope you try this, and bye!